My name is Henry, and for as long as I can remember, I've always felt drawn to flames. Not in a reckless or dangerous way, but with a deep sense of purpose. Growing up in a small town in the heart of the United States, I saw fires carve paths of destruction, threatening lives and livelihoods. My father was a firefighter before me, and I grew up watching him face the infernos with a combination of courage and humility. Being a firefighter wasn't just a job for him, it was a calling. When I turned 20, I followed in his footsteps and joined the fire department in my town. For 22 years, firefighting became my life. I lived and breathed this mission. Each call was an opportunity to make a difference, to protect people, and give them hope in the face of devastation. I always believed in God and always felt His presence in the fire station and on the front lines. It's hard not to feel it when you're walking into situations where the odds seem against you, but somehow you come out the other side. In recent years, something started to change. The fires grew worse, bigger, hotter, and more unpredictable. We used to have a fire season. Now it seemed like the fire season never ended. Entire communities were decimated in a matter of hours, and no matter how hard we fought, it felt like we were always one step behind. I couldn't help but wonder why. Why were things spiraling out of control? Was it just bad luck, climate change, or something deeper? This question weighed on me, especially during the fires of 2018. Those fires were unlike anything I had ever seen. They didn't just destroy forests and homes. They felt personal, as if they were alive, attacking every vulnerable place they could find. Even with decades of experience, I felt powerless, like I was fighting an enemy I couldn't see or understand. I prayed more than ever during that time, asking God for guidance, strength, and answers. But instead of clarity, I felt a growing sense of doubt. Was I really making a difference? Was my work still part of His plan? The fires of 2018 were devastating in a way that defied all my experience. It was as if they had a will of their own, attacking the most vulnerable areas with uncanny precision. The destruction was widespread and relentless. Amidst the chaos, I received an urgent call to rescue residents from a community that was about to be engulfed by flames. I knew every second counted. My team and I rushed to the scene, determined to save as many lives as possible. When we arrived, the situation was chaotic. The fire was advancing rapidly, and the thick smoke made it difficult to breathe and see. We split into teams and began going from house to house, searching for anyone who was still there. In one of the houses, we found an elderly lady, clutching a photo album, unable to leave on her own. "I don't want to leave all this behind," she said, tears in her eyes. I knelt beside her, trying to offer comfort. "We will ensure your safety," I replied firmly. "But we need to go now." As we carried the lady to the truck, I felt a sense of urgency intensify. With every passing moment, the flames drew closer. A sudden gust of wind changed the direction of the fire, forcing us to adjust our course. We found a young father and his 2 children, desperately trying to pack their belongings. "I can't leave everything behind," he said, his voice filled with despair. "You must leave," I said firmly. "Things can be replaced, your lives cannot." As we helped the family reach the truck, the fire began to surround us. The heat was suffocating, and the smoke made every breath a challenge. As we ran to escape, I felt an overwhelming fear grip me, but I stayed calm, focusing on the task at hand. I found a narrow trail that allowed us to escape the flames, but the fire continued to follow us closely. The radio crackled, but the signal was weak. "Henry, what's your status?" "We're trapped," I replied, coughing from the smoke, trying to find another way out. All I could do was pray, asking for God's help to get us out alive. As we ran to escape, the sense of fear and urgency grew with each second. The flames around us roared like a hungry predator, and the heat was nearly unbearable. We managed to find a narrow trail that seemed to be our only way out, but the fire continued to follow us closely. as if it was determined to consume us. Every step was a struggle, every breath a challenge. I could hear the radio crackling, but the signal was weak and full of static. "Henry, what's your status?" "We're trapped," I replied, coughing from the smoke, trying to find another way out. All I could do was pray, asking for God's help to get us out alive. Suddenly, everything around me went dark. There was no more sound, no heat, no pain. I opened my eyes and realized I was in a completely different place. There was light around me, not the harsh, artificial light of a hospital, nor the orange, threatening light of the fire, but a soft and radiant light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It wasn't just light. It was warmth, a warmth that enveloped me and settled deep within me. The first thing I noticed was the stillness. For someone who had spent a life surrounded by chaos, the roar of flames, the blaring sirens, and the voices crying for help, the silence was almost disorienting. But it wasn't an empty silence. It was a full silence, as if the silence itself carried meaning. I looked down, expecting to see my body, my hands, my soot-covered boots. But what I saw left me perplexed. I wasn't there, or rather, I was, but not in the way I had always understood myself. My body, the one I had trusted for decades to pull people out of danger, to hold a hose steady in the face of flames, wasn't there. And yet, I felt more alive, more real than ever. It was as if the physical part of me had been stripped away, leaving only my essence, my soul, if I can call it that. That was when I noticed the peace. It wasn't just around me. It was within me, filling every corner of what I now perceived as being me, not the body I had left behind. I felt light, free in a way I had never imagined possible. For a moment, I wondered if I was dead. The idea should have terrified me, but it didn't. Instead, it felt like the answer to a question I didn't even know I had been asking all my life. If this was death, it was not something to be feared. It was beautiful. While I was there, or floating, or existing, whatever it was I was doing, I began to notice more about the space around me. The light was not just light. It was alive, softly pulsing as if it had a heartbeat. It didn't hurt to look at it, but it was impossible to fully comprehend. It changed and shimmered, taking on colors I couldn't name and patterns that seemed to move with purpose. I could feel it too, not just on the surface of what used to be my skin, but inside me, as if it were part of me, and I part of it. And then there was the presence. I can't explain it in words because words are insufficient. It wasn't a person or a voice, at least not in the way we understand these things. It was more like a consciousness, a knowing that filled the space around me and within me. As I floated in the soft light, the presence around me became more intense. Suddenly, I felt a sense of pure and unconditional love, something beyond anything I had ever experienced. It was as if every part of me was known, seen, and accepted, regardless of my mistakes and failures. Slowly, a figure began to form in front of me, a figure that emanated light and warmth. I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that I was in the presence of God. I felt a deep peace, a tranquility that seemed to dissolve all my doubts and fears. God spoke to me, not with words, but through a direct understanding that touched my soul. He showed me a vision of the world, not just the physical world, but a spiritual reality that coexisted with ours. I saw the fires that ravaged the earth, but I also saw dark and malevolent forces feeding these flames, physical representations of corruption and spiritual estrangement of people. God revealed to me that these fires were not mere natural disasters, but signs of a deep spiritual disconnection, a consequence of human choices over time. I saw scenes of people living their daily lives, often unaware of the spiritual impact of their actions. I saw spiritual apathy, the pursuit of selfishness, fear, and hatred spreading, creating fertile ground for destruction. However, God also showed me points of light, places where faith, love, and truth still shone intensely. These points of light created a spiritual barrier against the darkness, preventing the fire from spreading with the same ferocity. That was when I understood the message God wanted me to convey to the world. He told me that these fires were a warning, a call for humanity to return to faith, love, and truth. It was an opportunity to recognize our mistakes, to turn to God, and to create a fairer and more compassionate world. The mission He gave me was clear. I should share this vision with everyone, help people understand the true nature of the fires and the importance of living according to God's teachings. The sense of purpose and determination I felt at that moment was overwhelming. I knew that my life would never be the same, and that I was destined to bring this message of hope and redemption to the world. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back in the physical world. I was lying in a hospital bed, with the sounds of machines and the murmurs of voices around me. The transition was abrupt and disorienting, as if I had been pulled from a deep dream. My body felt heavy and sore, but my mind was clear, filled with the vivid memory of what had happened. My wife, Sarah, was by my side, holding my hand tightly. Her eyes were red from crying, but her face lit up with relief as she saw me wake up. "Henry, you came back to us," she said in a trembling voice, tears streaming down her face. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry and irritated. Sarah offered me a glass of water, helping me take small sips that brought some relief. I knew I needed to tell her what had happened, but I didn't know where to start. How could I explain to her the vision I had had, the message I had received from God? As I struggled to find the words, Sarah squeezed my hand and said, "I felt that you were somewhere special. I knew God was taking care of you." In the days that followed, as I recovered in the hospital, I began to share my experience with Sarah. I spoke about the light, the peace, and the presence of God. I told her about the vision of the fires and the dark forces that fed them. Sarah listened attentively, holding my hand the whole time. Her unwavering faith in God gave me the courage to keep talking, and she fully supported me when I said I felt I needed to share this message with others. As I grew stronger, I began to tell my story to close friends and family. Some were skeptical, but many listened with attention and empathy. God's vision and the message of hope and redemption resonated in their hearts. I realized that the task of sharing this message would not be easy, but I also knew that I was not alone. Sarah was by my side, and God had given me the strength and determination to move forward. I was determined to fulfill the mission He had entrusted to me, regardless of the challenges I would face. Shortly after leaving the hospital, I began to realize that my vision had profoundly transformed me. Each interaction, each moment, seemed to carry a weight and purpose I had never felt before. I shared my story with more people, including members of my community and fellow firefighters. Often, it was difficult to find the right words, and sometimes people reacted with disbelief or indifference. However, each time I shared my experience, I felt a sense of peace and fulfillment, as if I were doing exactly what God had asked me to do. Over time, I was invited to speak at local churches, community centers, and schools. Standing before these audiences, I felt a mix of nervousness and conviction. I told them about the light, the presence of God, and the vision of the fires as a reflection of our spiritual disconnection. I explained that these disasters were not mere natural accidents, but signs that we needed to reconnect with our faith and spiritual values. I was surprised to see how many people were touched by my message. Some cried, others asked questions, and many shared their own experiences of faith and struggle. Gradually, I began to see the effects of this message in my community. Families who hadn't prayed together in years began to set aside time to reconnect with God. Churches that had become more focused on programs than on purpose opened their doors for extended hours of worship and prayer. People began to reach out to their neighbors with acts of kindness and encouragement. I saw how these small acts of faith and love began to transform our lives and create an atmosphere of hope and renewal. There were still moments of doubt and discouragement when I wondered if I was making a difference. However, whenever these doubts arose, I remembered God's words during my vision. Be faithful and leave the rest to me. These words became my mantra, a constant reminder that my role was to share the message and trust that God would take care of the rest. This renewed faith gave me the strength to carry on, knowing that even if I couldn't see all the results, every small light I helped ignite was part of a bigger and deeper plan. As I reflected on everything that had happened, I felt immense gratitude for the second chance I had been given. I was not just alive. I was more awake and aware than ever before. My experience brought me a new perspective on life, faith, and spiritual connection. I felt that my mission was just beginning, and that there was much more to be done to share this message of hope and redemption with the world. Each day was a new opportunity to light a candle in the darkness and to remind people that, even in the darkest moments, there was always a reason to have hope. My relationship with Sarah grew even stronger, supporting me unconditionally. She became my partner in this spiritual journey. Together, we started organizing prayer meetings at our home, inviting friends, family, and neighbors to gather and share their experiences of faith. These gatherings became a source of strength and renewal for all of us, a constant reminder that we were not alone in our journey. With every story I shared, with every person I encountered, I felt that I was fulfilling the mission God had given me. Even on the most difficult days, when the burden seemed too heavy to bear, I remembered God's words, "I am with you always." These words gave me the courage and determination to continue, knowing that I was on the right path. Today, as I look back and see how much my life has changed since that day in the fire, I feel a deep sense of peace and purpose. I know there is still much work to be done, but I am confident that with faith and determination, I can continue to light candles in the darkness and help create a more just, compassionate, and spiritually connected world. And no matter how challenging the journey may be, I know that I am never alone, for God is always by my side, guiding and sustaining me every step of the way.